Hello everybody, my name is Magnus and welcome to my 100 subscriber special. If you've been paying attention lately, I have not put out any videos for at least a few weeks, if not a month. I do apologize for having that much time in between as I was getting ready for another Let's Play. I wanted to get out this video before I got into that Let's Play. I had a few life events that have prevented me from really being able to record. Been very busy with my work and my family, and to be quite honest, I needed to take a break from many of things, and one of those things was recording for a bit, as that was taking up a lot of time and brain space over what I really needed to focus on. Rest assured, I will continue from this point on, putting out videos after this 100 subscriber special, because the Let's Plays are a little bit easier for me to record. Not a lot of editing that needs to happen for that, although I will choose to do a little bit more than I was doing in some previous episodes. I also had a different idea of what I wanted to do for my 100 subscriber special. I originally wanted to do a video on why I loved Shining Force, because I do love the series, but I've actually only played 2 games within the Shining Force series, although I've played more in the Shining series itself. And I thought to myself, well, I'm only really showing that I love the series based off of 2 games instead of the entirety of the series, or at least majority of the series. Why don't I get a little bit more experience with the other games to be able to provide a better answer and more full answer on the series itself? So I'm going to save that script for another time, hopefully for a larger subscriber special, after a few more Let's Plays, and we'll see where it goes. I do intend on providing that video at some point in time, not necessarily for a subscriber special, but hopefully it matches up on the timeline. Now, we'll move on into the subscriber special. So first, thank you all for subscribing. I have actually continued to get even more subscribers while I had this break. So welcome to all the new subscribers, and hopefully I will have some good Let's Plays and other videos out there for you to enjoy as you continue watching my channel. And I'd also like to thank everybody who's been through this journey with me for the entirety that I've been running this. I didn't actually expect to reach the 100 subscriber mark for playing Shining Force, an old game that not a lot of people have really heard of. Especially when you are comparing it to other series like the Fire Emblem series, which is massively popular. I didn't really expect this, so I appreciate that, and hopefully I can continue providing that great content to you as well. But now, what am I going to do for this 100 subscriber special? I am going to double down on doing what apparently everybody likes watching for me, but hearing my opinions on characters, especially some controversial characters as I have found within my tier list. I want to really reapproach this, and I'm going to focus on the Shining Force 1 characters, as it seems that the Shining Force 2 characters actually aren't as controversial with the way that I've picked them out. Maybe I just have to wait for a little bit more time, though, to get those comments in. So now we'll go into the main portion of the video. And to start, I want to say that I love all these characters in Shining Force. I have not been able to play all of them all the time, but I've at least played each of them once or twice, if not through 100 different playthroughs for some of them. They're all enjoyable, they each bring their own uniqueness to the game, and you can use all of them. Even Adam, you can use. He's difficult, but that's okay. I'm not concerning myself with that. So know that none of this is out of just a dislike for a character or anything. This is just pure, what do they do within the game? And I want to clarify something. If I had put a character within the B tier on any of my tier lists. Those characters are good. If you look at my tier lists, you can't fill your 12-person party with just the S and the A tier. You have to use a B tier unit in order to fill that 12-person party. And it's not necessary to have the 12-person party, especially if you are speedrunning, I wouldn't suggest that. But for those just trying to enjoy the game, having a full 12-person team, it will include the B tier units, meaning that they are good. They are not bad characters. So hopefully you can take that when you go into me talking about this and why I rated them in a certain way. Just knowing that you aren't necessarily getting a great character, but a good one that's going to help you out throughout the game. Now, what characters am I going to talk about? I'm going to give you the list, and then we'll get into each character individually, but I'm going to talk about Balbaroy, because, wow, there are a lot of differing opinions on Balbaroy to mine, but that's okay. That's perfectly fine. We have Xylo, Domingo, Arthur, and May. May is probably the one that has received the least amount of comments, but I have seen them come through in some different arguments, and I definitely want to talk about that character a little bit more. So without further ado, Balbaroy. There is a reason why I rank him extremely high. He is better than most characters in the game of Shining Force because of his movement range and his movement type. He is able to get around the terrible terrain maps that you have that are rampant through Shining Force 1. And he's able to speedily get through all of them, faster than any other character. Even the ones that have his same movement length, when they aren't disadvantaged in the maps, he's able to keep up with them. Now you may ask, well, he's a weak character in comparison to others when you talk about raw stats. And you're right. His attack doesn't grow by a lot, his defense doesn't grow by a lot, his HP doesn't grow by a lot, and his agility is okay. And that would normally bring him down in the rankings. But there is a fact within Shining Force that kind of makes those stats a little bit irrelevant with all of the other things that you have within the game. First, I want to talk about thresholds. Through most of these games, other RPGs, there is a threshold in which you have to meet or exceed in order to do damage, to be effective in playing the game, etc., etc. In this case, there is the threshold of defense on the enemy. The defense of the enemy only reaches up to 40 by the end of the game. And really, it's only at the end of the game and a little bit before that you have any enemies. Even if you include the terrain bonuses or the terrain advantage, that would get to that number. 40 is what you need to meet, so just keep that in mind when I'm talking about all these numbers. So first, with that in mind, let's talk about the tools that you have within the game to make you meet that threshold for any character. You have the Power Ring. The Power Ring is effectively a plus 19 attack boost that you can get to anybody. That's plus 4 for equipping the ring itself, and plus 15 for using the ring. Now, you do have limited uses on the ring. However, if you don't change out your weapon, and you don't kind of waste attacks, you at least have 1, if not 2 attacks that have that plus 19 bonus. So we're already knocking down that threshold by 19 points. So now you only need 21 points of attack to start doing damage over 1 point of damage to the enemy. Then you have the weapons that you could bring to Balbaroy. Balbaroy does have a bad type of weapon initially in swords, and that is something that is going to be a little bit of a weakness for him until you at least get up to the steel sword. But that's okay, with a plus 19 attack on top of whatever weapon that he has, it's going to be effective. Now, you can compare that to other units, and they may be having more attack. But remember, you're able to move that plus 19 attack plus whatever his weapon is to anywhere on the map where nobody else is really able to get that far, without the help of movement boosters, which you could also give to Balbaroy. And on top of the weapon that he can have, he has a base attack of 10. Meaning that he really hits the threshold, even with the middling of 40, with the middling swords that he gets with his base attack. Which is just insane when you think about it. There's a lot of characters that are going to get past that 40 pretty quickly, especially when you add in the powering. But remember, because you're able to move this wherever, you're able to bring this super over the threshold number to any enemy for at least one attack, if not two. And that makes Balbaroy very effective for sniping out monsters. And you don't even have to bring into the fact that he can equip the Sword of Darkness, Sword of Light, Chaos Breaker. Eamon can do the same things. He doesn't actually need that, and I've done plenty of playthroughs where I didn't equip him with those things. You add in the plus 30 attack katana that you get near the end of the game, or at least when you get Musashi. You're now bringing a plus 49 plus whatever his base attack is into the field, so you're able to hit anywhere. If you do want to equip him with the Chaos Breaker or the Sword of Light, you do have now a ranged spell option that's able to do a massive amount of damage, and is really what makes the Chaos Breaker and the Sword of Light very effective for Max, is, well, he's able to cast the spells due to the damage now. And all this is to really say that when you add in all of those bonuses and everything, he's able to snipe out monsters. And this isn't just to end maps quickly. This is to be able to kill enemies, level up Balbaroy, get him the slightly bit of stronger that he would get with the different levels, and allow him to promote, get to the better weapons on time, and to continue to power up to where he's able to keep up to the power level of the rest of your party that is strong. And now you have a very fast-moving, avoiding terrain unit that is able to, or that is just as powerful as your other units, because he was able to get to the enemies first and kill. If you don't do that, then he will get behind, and then you won't see the effectiveness of Balbaroy, because you didn't give him the care that you would have given any other character. And overall, even if you wanted to kill all of the monsters and not speed run through the map, you really wanted to just destroy everything, Balbaroy will allow you to do that faster in almost any case. Now, you don't have unlimited uses of that power ring, but that's the same thing if you would have put that to any other character. And he still has a huge amount of attack with the later on weapons especially, that he's able to get to pretty quickly with his promotion. Now, others bring up examples such as Blue or Kokichi. We're not going to bring up Eamon, because Eamon is almost the same as Balbaroy. I think Balbaroy just has a little bit more attack in the end. But Kokichi may have one extra range from being able to use things like the Power Spear or the Valkyrie, which is extremely powerful. It's a great weapon. But remember that he has one less movement. And beyond the first turn, that means that Balbaroy is always going to be ahead of Kokichi, and to get to more enemy monsters, or enemy monsters that are further away, rather, than Kokichi is. Also, there are too many ranged and magic enemies that are able to cancel out that ranged effect that Kokichi has, or the range advantage that he has on enemies when you are flying them around to get to different monsters. Especially near the end game, there's a huge amount of ranged enemies, and you can't really use that as the advantage for him, because there's no counterattacks. Balbaroy's in just as much danger as Kokichi when you're moving them around. And if you then position yourself to just be able to take out one monster, then not be in danger of anything else, you're probably able to do that with Balbaroy anyway. And those ranged weapons really lose their power until you get to the Valkyrie. Kokichi comes at the point in time when you get the Power Spear, and it's great. And at that moment, he may be a little bit stronger than Balbaroy if you had given him the Power Ring as well, if you compare that damage. But it will quickly fall off, because you don't get another ranged spear until the Valkyrie, which is near the end of the game. Whereas Balbaroy will at least get the steel sword once he's promoted, which he should be able to pretty easily by the point in time that you pick that up. And Kokichi's going to have to rely on picking up the lances that now you've lost that ranged advantage. Now, when you talk about Blue still has the problem of even slower movement than Kokichi. And then you compare it to Balbaroy, he's extremely slow there. And Blue has an issue on the fact that he doesn't have a weapon to guarantee attack from. And so after promotion, you really have to be mindful of how much attack that he's getting. He may just have an extremely weak attack for you because you just boosted up on defense and HP, because that's what Blue does. So now you have a flying tank, but he's not able to do any damage. So you do have to watch out for that, and know that there's a risk with him. You also get him at a time where Balbaroy is probably already promoted if you were putting in any effort for him, because he's been around for a large number of maps. And if you think about it, he only needs about 5 levels to promote before you can then give him the steel sword and move on. So hopefully that talk through Balbaroy makes you appreciate him a little bit more. And with the way that I rank them in the tier list is how much faster or how much easier are the maps to get through when you use that character. Not necessarily in a speed run sense, but in general, if I'm able to use the same characters and delete the enemies at the same pace, who's going to make me do it faster is going to be the better character, and that's why I put Balbaroy up there. And yes, I realize that's my icon. I do like Balbaroy. I really do like my Birdman. But it's not because I have an extreme like of the character. It's because he's a great character to use. You should definitely give him a chance and give him his levels and see how powerful he really can be and how quickly he's able to dispatch enemies. Next up, we have Xylo. This is one of those where I have to bring up the B tier list problem. I ranked him as a good character. I don't know why I have to kind of go over him again. But I will go through the reason why he's a B and not anything more. Because he is a good character. And let's face it, he is an excellent character before he promotes. Xylo, when you get him, is able to move through terrain fast, especially the terrain that is there in the first battle that you have him, so he has a great start to your team. He has an impressive amount of attack, probably on par, if not better, than most of your frontline characters, and he's really able to showcase his skills pre-promotion. And if you look at Xylo, when we talk about why he's so much worse after promotion, is look at the data that Seastalker has provided for the average attack on the different characters. For Xylo, at level 20, his average attack pre-promote is 30. More than likely, you're going to have something higher. In my experience, I've seen it much higher. Let's keep in mind that attack threshold problem that Balbaroy had. We really need to get to, beyond 40 is how much damage you're about able to do at the end of the game. So you have him, let's say you're going to get him up to level 20 and promote him, because that's really where he benefits the most. He will lose almost 10 to 15 attack. Overall, all the way through the game, pretty much, if you promote him early. So you really want to promote him late. This is just the general advice for any characters without weapons. Post-promotion, he'll drop to 34 attack. So remember I said the pre-promote's about 30 attack as you go through it. That's just with the averages of how his levels went. However, note that the way that his levels went, he took a certain stat within that level and then moved on, so it may not have taken into account that rubber banding because he took the higher attacks and saw how it went. But drops down to 34 after promotion. If you got Xylo up to level 20, you might, and then promoted him, you might be in the Cane battle if you're grinding. And that's not a good spot to really drop down to 34 attack. At that point in time, you have Durahans all over the place in terrain. You start getting to these really beefy monsters that have a good defense and high HP. And so you really need a lot more attack than that. Now, if you add in the power ring into it, you can see that it grows immensely. But he doesn't actually get through all the terrain that you want him to. And so again, you compare him to anybody that's able to fly, and he kind of falls off. And then his attack gain overall is pretty bad, because he doesn't have a weapon to guarantee that he gets to a certain point. You're really depending on the RNG. And if you look at the data, the average attack was showing at about a 42, but we're very likely look at the low end of about 50, is what I've seen through my thousands of playthroughs with Xylo, and I play with him a lot because he is one of my favorite characters. The low end is about a 50, so you're doing maybe 10 points of damage to Dark Dragon. That is pretty bad. Now, if you look at the high end, you know, by the time that he's, you know, around level 20, 15 to 20 maybe, promoted, you're looking at 80. So you might have a 50, or you might have an 80, or somewhere in between. But it's super unreliable. And that's the problem that you have, is if he doesn't get to that high-end attack, you have to then, you pretty much have to, at that point, give him the power ring and the attack, and not provide that to another unit that's able to fly over the obstacles that you have in the later maps, where there are gaps that you have to cross over, and it's much faster to fly through it than to run around it. And that unreliability and that drop in your attack, because you're probably at level 20 going to have, you know, a 40-something attack, is just a massive decrease for him. And his survivability pretty much stays pretty low at, you know, promotion afterwards, up until the higher levels, because his defense doesn't actually go up that much. He's pretty tanky in the beginning, and then he kind of drops off at that point. And that's why I rank him as a B. He's very reliable in the beginning portions, and I would say for you know, two or three chapters, he's a great unit, and then afterwards he is so unreliable that he may become a detriment to your team by that point in time, where you could have had a better character in his place. Or he could be great. You don't know that yet. So you're going to have to see that with your playthroughs. Just know that that's the reason why he's a B. Alright, next we'll talk about Domingo. Again, he is a good character, that's why he's in the B ranking. So please do not bash me on the fact that I'm not calling him a good character. He is good. However, he has his own problems that really make him difficult to say that he's a great character. We're going to talk about spells first. The major problem that I have with his spells is not that his spell list is terrible. He gets freeze up to level 4, which is fantastic. We love getting up to that freeze 3 and 4. And he gets boost, which, although expensive, it is a very effective spell, because it's like having another power ring without actually having something that might break. So you get to have multiple turns with it, and can plan around it to boost up all of your guys that you need it. The problem that I have with Domingo is when you get him and the spells that he has, and how long it takes for him to get those spells. We'll start off with what he starts with. Freeze 1. Spell is okay. Remember that by the time that you're getting him, we are in Chapter 4, after your first battle, which is a big battle. You only have another 2 battles within Chapter 4, and then you're moving on. You're only having Freeze level 1. If you compare him to your other mages, this is pretty bad, because Teo probably has Blaze 3, or maybe Blaze 4 if you've been really putting effort into her. And at the very least, Henri probably has Freeze 2 and Blaze 2. So they're going to be more powerful. Domingo's not going to have the powerful spells yet. Well, how long does it take Domingo to get Freeze level 2? He gets it at level 4, which means that he has to have 9 attacks or kills. More than likely have some kills to get that experience. That can be very difficult to set up, because he doesn't have the MP to be able to get that many with Freeze, so he's probably going to have to attack something to be able to get it within the first battle. Which, if he got it Freeze 2 after the first battle, that's not necessarily that bad, but if you think about it, that's putting a lot of effort into this character. And although it may be worthwhile in your mind, if you compare that to all the other characters that you have, that you're trying to get levels on and everything else, that means you're going to be favoring Domingo in order to get to that point. So it's not extremely realistic to get to Freeze level 2 by the end of that first battle, and you may have to wait to the last battle of that chapter. And frankly, the last battle of that chapter is the perfect time to have a level 2 or level 3 spell, because of the formations of the enemies and the amount of damage that it would do to the bats, which can give a lot of good experience. And now let's suppose that you did get to Freeze level 2 within the first battle, and you get to that second battle. Oh great, bam, we got this nice good spell. It's at least comparable to the other mages that we have. Maybe they're a little bit more powerful, but he's catching up. When do we get the next one? You don't get it until level 13. That is a long way away. And although Domingo gains experience like nobody's business, that is another 9 levels. So take the math that we were doing before, because you can't get a level with just 2 kills. You have to have at least 3 kills/attacks to get you up to that 100 experience. So 9 times 3 is 27. That's how long it will take, is 27 engagements at the very least by Domingo. More than likely have to have some kills there to be able to do this. And although Freeze 3 is a good spell, you're still lagging behind Henri and Teo and a lot of your other characters in the damage output, because you're only able to deal up to what Freeze level 2 is able to accomplish. Once you get Freeze level 3, then Domingo is a good character. Yeah, you have a range 3 spell, able to hit an area of effect, so you're probably going to get 2 monsters, if you're lucky 3. Some formations end up being more, but Freeze 3 is a good spell. I love that spell. But it doesn't have the power output that you need at the end game. Well, what do you need at the end game? Get up to Freeze 4. When do you get Freeze 4? Level 26. So now, after you've gotten him in the middle of Chapter 3, you need to give him 25 levels to give him the spell that he needs at the end game to be able to dish out the damage to one-shot or nearly one-shot these very tanky monsters like chimeras and blue dragons, as well as the machines that you're fighting and everything. That is a long time. Go back to the calculations before, that's 75 of those engagements. if you've gotten enough experience with those. And after level 20, his experience gains aren't quick anymore. They aren't increased at the rate that they were previously. You're dealing with reduced experience gains, just like everybody else does when they hit level 20 when they're promoted. And oh, by the way, once you hit level 20, that's when you get boost. His only other really good spell, you could try using D-Soul if you want, but that's probably not going to be extremely effective for you. That's why he's not a great character. The reasons why I like him, though, are that he has a good movement type. It's just a bad amount. So only moving 5 is not great, but he's able to float, which... There's only a couple maps where that really matters of floating versus flying, so I'm going to ignore that, really. But flying is, in general, good, especially in the later maps, when you have those gaps. So the 5 doesn't actually matter as much at that point, but he is going to be lagging behind characters like Kokichi, Blue, well, not Blue, he's on par with Blue, but Balbaroy or Eamon. And just remember, as we're talking about this, yes, you can increase his movement, but you could increase the other characters' movements as well. So keep that in your mind, that if you're using movement increases on one character, you are taking away the opportunity to use that on another character. So, you have to kind of throw that out, because they might be able to become like another character if you increase their movement, but the other one would have been able to outclass them if they got it. So, the main thing with Domingo is that having a flying caster is good, especially a very survivable one, because he is the best tanky mage that you have, so it's going to be very hard to kill him with his HP and his defense that he'll have. But it's just going to take a long time to get to the spells that you want. And so you have to really judge that. And if you're not grinding, that's going to be difficult for him. If you do not favor him during battles, he will not get up to Freeze 4. Trust me, that's what happened with my playthrough. He just... Getting up to level 26 was going to be impossible just going straight through without repeating battles. So just going to have to keep that in mind, unless you're just going to kill everybody with Domingo, and now he's your only good character. Next, we'll move on to Arthur. He is a very controversial character, because he has this archetype where he starts off really bad, in all honesty. Really bad. But he has the potential to be the most broken character at the end game. Really from middle to end game, depending on how much you favor him during that time. To start, yes, Arthur can be your most powerful character. Yes, he has the time in the game to be able to grow. You get him in Chapter 2 after the second battle, meaning he at least has 2 more battles within that chapter, and then he has the rest of the game to grow. But no, he still isn't a good character, because of the effort and the favoring that you need to provide him in order to gain those levels to be that monster at the end game. Let's start off with how he is right when you get him. He is very weak. His attack is fairly low, although it can be okay in certain circumstances, and the rest of his stats are absolute garbage. Absolute garbage in comparison to any of the other centaurs that you have, or really almost any of the characters that you have. And the battles that he has when you get him really show how weak that he is. The first battle actually isn't too bad, because it's the circus battle. You have some new enemies to go against that don't really have that much defense. But he definitely won't help against the boss. You are only going to do middling damage to the boss unless you power up with a power ring, as we've already talked about. other characters might be more useful with that power-up than him because they're already going to have extra attack. And let's say that you did favor him and you gained a couple of levels in that battle. That will not help you against the zombies and the skeletons that you are about to face in the next battle. It's absolute no-goes. He doesn't have the attack to go past their defense, and even with the boosts from the ring, you are just barely getting over that threshold. In fact, you're getting over the threshold only because of those items, and he was a little bit below that threshold, meaning he's going to do reduced damage in comparison to others that have the ring, because it's not just a plus 19 anymore, it's actually reduced by whatever that ring has to make up for in that defense. For example, if Arthur had a total of 15 attack with his weapon before getting the ring and the boost from the ring, and the skeleton had 16 defense, then you're taking a -1 loss on that, not to include any of the terrain effects and everything that's going on. So the defenses of the skeletons and zombies are just ridiculous enough that it makes it difficult for Arthur, even when boosted up, to get the kills that you need in that battle. And you absolutely need to kill with the characters that you're attacking with. You need for somebody to be one-shotting the enemies in that battle. After that battle, it doesn't get that much better when it comes to the defenses besides attacking the priests and the mages that come up. Outside of that, you still have a bunch of skeletons to fight through, although it'll get a little bit better as he levels up. And he really is this liability until he's probably about level 15, is what I've seen. Once he reaches that level, he seems to start doing pretty well, and he starts getting some magic online and things like that. But if you think about it, that's 11 levels that he has to gain, because you get him at level 4. 11 levels until he is no longer this major liability from his HP, his defense, his attack that really isn't that great. And that just is not useful in the long term, because you are going to be suffering for a bunch of levels and having to favor him in order to have him keep up with your team, meaning that others aren't getting that experience. And as a last note for Arthur, spells are useful, but when you only get the level 1 spells for the damaging type, the blaze, the freeze, and the bolt, you're not really doing much. You have guaranteed damage, but you're talking 6 to 7, 7 to 8 points, and then getting close to about 10, 11 points of damage, or the bolt 1 that you're almost guaranteed to have. And those are coming pretty late on. You're not killing anybody with that. You are killing weakened monsters with it. Which, if that is your definition of, oh, this is a great ability, you need to rethink that with all the other character options that you have. So, Arthur, I rank him the way I rank him because, yes, he may end up being powerful, and so that's the use that you have, is if you are able to grind him or raise him with your team, he can be pretty powerful at the end. The rest of the time is really just a struggle, and he will be well behind your other centaurs and all the other characters that you have, besides Adam, if you put in the same amount of effort. And the reward for putting in even more effort really doesn't kick in until well late into the game, where almost any other character can actually achieve a decent amount of success without having to do that. And lastly, we'll talk about May. I am bringing this up because there's been a few comments on it, and I have made a note that I would actually rather have Ken on my team than Mei as a centaur. And then some people that I know have also tried to argue with me about this. And I want to bring up the points and talk about the way that I categorize units, because it will be different from other people. So first off, centaurs are good and bad. We've talked about that their ranged attacks can be useful until they're not, because you are left with a power spear for a very long time until you get the Valkyrie, and then you only have one spear user that is able to have the super powerful ranged attack. They have high movement, except when they're in a ton of terrain, and then that goes completely away. You're back to as much as anybody else that's moving 5. You are moving the same through all that terrain. So you put those things onto Mei, Ken, whatever other centaur that you want to talk about, and then what does Mei bring to the table? She does bring some tankiness. Her initial defense when you get her, even though she's pretty under-leveled in what I can see and in my experience, her defense is really good, and she's able to withstand the front lines pretty well, which is great, especially against the Dark Dwarves and the Rune Knights that you're facing initially when you have her. And, well, that's what Mei brings to the table, at least initially. We'll get to what she looks like at the end game in a bit. But when you have that tank that's able to move far, it doesn't do you well if that tank also can't do something. And to be quite honest, she hits like a child right off the bat, barely doing any damage to any of the enemies, especially in comparison to Ken, who you had from the beginning already. So I had a couple of battles to at least reach level 2, probably is about level 3, and it just doesn't look well for her when the other centaur is doing a lot more damage. Now you may be saying, hey, that's just the trade-off you have, one's more tanky, because Ken definitely doesn't have any defense. But what he does have is enough HP to get by, and he has the attack. And in the beginning, you don't really need a tank. You do need to survive some damage that's coming your way, but you more need the actual attack to get past the enemy's defenses, because you have a lot of other characters that are actually pretty weak as well, and they're only doing a middling amount of damage. So if you add on another character that is only doing middling damage, and you see right next to them is somebody that's doing more and is still able to survive for the HP that he has, you're going to want to choose the guy that's doing more damage at that point. It allows you to get through those battles faster, kill the Rune Knights before they can have another turn, etc., etc. And to counteract her tankiness on the defense side, her HP is extremely low. For a long time in the game, she is well behind most of your other centaurs and other frontline characters. And when you face mages, that is terrifying with her. You could take a level 1 spell, but initially, you're not going to be able to take a Blaze 2 from the mage that's in the next battle. And that's a major problem for you. Now, you put that all together, and you say, wait, I've used Mei from when I get her, and then towards the mid-game to the end game, she turns out awesome, and that's what we should be focusing on. And I will say that after promoted past level 6, her HP starts reversing the story, and her defense kind of stops, and then she actually becomes pretty well on that tankiness, a good balance between the two, and her attack can catch up a bit, but it is almost always behind Ken and a lot of the other centaurs that you have. And so the question is, why would you rank her higher if she's not able to dish out that damage that you need? You really need that damage within this game. The defense will only get you so far, It's not extremely reliable when you have other enemies that are able to bypass those defenses. That's why it's important for her HP to go up when she's promoted, because you have a lot more enemies that are able to bypass that defense. And she doesn't bring anything extra to the team. So in a world where Ken isn't even considered good with his attack, but he is average, when you bring in other characters that have below that attack, I tend to not think that they're that worthwhile. And I have played Mei a lot in my teams, put her right next up to the other centaurs, and have found her a little bit lacking in those categories for a long time. And not unusable, but I don't think as useful of a character as somebody who's able to dish out a little bit more damage. And it usually ends up being that little bit more that Ken is ahead that makes him seem better at that point in time. Or maybe some of the other characters that you have. So that's what you have to consider with Mei. Thank you all for watching and listening to me rant about these different characters. I do find it interesting that most people are watching this type of video to get my perspective on it, more so than anybody actually watching the Let's Plays that I go through. So it's been an interesting experience going back over these characters and being able to really dig into it. I realized that I have made this a much longer video than I initially planned for, but that's because I like to bring up as many points as possible if I'm really talking about a character. And to be able to give you the perspective that I have on them is important to me, even if it makes it a much longer video than what YouTube would like me to make. In any case, I hope you all enjoyed the video. I thank you again for everybody that has subscribed, understanding that this has come out a lot later than I expected, than probably anybody else has expected. But I do appreciate the support of everybody who has been watching my content, and I'm looking forward to providing more to you as we continue on throughout the Shining Force series, and maybe into some other games later on, but initially we'll go through Shining Force. And speaking of, the next game that I will be playing is Shining Force CD. I've been able to get it to run on my computer and be able to provide that Let's Play to you all. I am looking forward to this so much because I have not played Shining Force CD yet. It will be a pretty blind playthrough. I think I'm only going to I'm going to see if I can find anything spoiler free to allow me to ensure I get the different items if I'm missing an item in an area. Although I'm an RPG player, so I'm probably going to find them anyway. But I want to make sure that I'm not going to miss out on anything in this game. And I think it does play a little bit differently than the other Shining Forces, I think. But I don't know. It's going to be a new experience for me. So I hope you enjoy. And I hope that it will also not have to wait that much longer before I'm able to put out those videos. It is a Let's Play, so it should be a lot easier for me. In either case, my name's been Magnus. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.